Millionaire visited his black ex-wife for the first time in 6 years and changed her life forever. She wiped the sweat from her brow with the back of her hand, the scent of earth and animal thick in the morning air, and didn't hear the car pull up. Didn't know that the man stepping out in a tailored navy suit was the same one who'd walked away 6 years ago, leaving her with nothing but silence and a wedding ring she'd long since pawned. Welcome back, my lovelies. Get ready for a story that will leave you speechless and make you believe in the power of destiny. Stay with me until the very end, because this story will restore your faith in humanity. Remember to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and comment your thoughts throughout the story. Your engagement helps us bring you more incredible narratives. The sun had barely cracked the horizon when Amara dragged the metal bucket across the dirt path, her boots scuffing against stones worn smooth by years of rain and footsteps. The farm smelled like it always did. Wet hay, manure, and the faint sweetness of wildflowers that grew stubbornly along the broken fence line. She didn't mind the smell anymore. It had become part of her, like the calluses on her palms and the ache in her lower back that never quite went away. She poured the slop into the trough, and the pigs scrambled over each other, grunting and snorting in a chaotic chorus. One of them, a fat pink sow she'd named Rosie, nudged her leg affectionately. Amara smiled just a little. Rosie didn't care that Amara's overalls were faded and patched at the knees. Rosie didn't care that she lived in a one-room cottage at the edge of the property, or that she hadn't heard her own name spoken with kindness in months. Good girl, Amara murmured, scratching behind the sow's ear. At least you're loyal. The joke tasted bitter. 6 years ago, she'd lived in a different world. A small apartment in the city, yes, but it had been theirs. She'd worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, while he chased his dreams. She'd believed in him when no one else did. She'd sacrificed her own ambitions, her own education, her own future, because she loved him. Because she thought love was supposed to be that way. And then one day he was gone. No fight. No warning. Just a note on the kitchen counter that said, "I need to do this on my own." She'd waited for him to come back. For weeks. Then months. Then she stopped waiting and started surviving. Now she was here. 32 years old, rearing pigs for a family that barely acknowledged her existence. The Pritchards were kind enough. They paid her on time, let her stay in the cottage rent-free. But she was invisible to them. Just another hired hand. Another body to do the work no one else wanted. Amara set the bucket down and straightened, pressing a hand to her back. The sky was wide and pale, streaked with soft orange light. Beautiful in a lonely sort of way. She heard the car before she saw it. The engine was too smooth, too quiet for this part of town. She turned, shading her eyes against the early light, and watched as a sleek black sedan rolled slowly up the dirt road. It looked out of place, like a swan in a chicken coop. Her heart stuttered. No! The car stopped just outside the fence. The door opened, and a man stepped out. He wore a navy suit that probably cost more than she made in 6 months. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine, already gathering dust from the road. His hair was shorter than she remembered, neat and professional. But his face. God, his face. She knew that face. She'd kissed that face. She'd cried into that face. Julian. He stood there for a moment, hands in his pockets, looking at her across the fence like he wasn't sure if she was real. Amara's breath caught in her throat. Her hands, still holding the empty bucket, began to tremble. She set it down carefully, deliberately, because if she didn't, she was going to drop it. He took a step forward. "Amara," he said. His voice. That low, steady voice that used to whisper her name in the dark. That used to promise her the world. She didn't move. Couldn't move. "What are you doing here?" Her voice came out flat. Guarded. Julian swallowed. His jaw tightened, and for a moment he looked almost vulnerable. Almost like the man she used to know, before the money, before the success, before he became someone she didn't recognize. He stopped. Started again. "I came to see you." "Why?" The word hung between them like a challenge. Julian glanced around, at the farm, the animals, the sagging cottage in the distance. His expression shifted. Something like pain flickered across his features, quick and sharp. "Because I owe you an explanation." Amara laughed. It was a short, hollow sound. 6 years too late for that. "I know. Then why now, Julian?" She crossed her arms over her chest, a barrier between them. "Why show up here, dressed like that, acting like you have any right?" "Because I found something." His voice cracked, just slightly. "Something that made me realize, everything I have, everything I built, it was never mine." It was yours. She stared at him. The pigs grunted in the background. A rooster crowed somewhere in the distance. The world kept moving, but Amara felt frozen. What are you talking about? She whispered. Julian reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He held it out to her, his hand steady even though his eyes weren't. Read it, he said quietly. Please. Amara didn't take it. Not yet. Because she knew, whatever was on that paper, whatever truth he'd brought with him, it was going to change everything. And she wasn't sure she was ready for that. Have you ever had someone from your past show up unexpectedly and turn your world upside down? What would you do if they came back after years of silence? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your story. If you've made it this far into the story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us keep bringing you more heartwarming stories like this one. Amara's fingers were still trembling when she finally took the paper from Julian's hand. She unfolded it slowly, deliberately, as if the act itself might buy her time to prepare for whatever truth was hidden inside. It was a bank statement. Old. Dated 7 years ago. Her eyes scanned the page, catching fragments, account numbers, transaction dates, amounts that made her breath hitch. Then she saw it. Her name. Amara Okoye. Listed as a co-applicant on a business loan. $25,000. Approved. She looked up at Julian, confusion clouding her features. I don't understand. I never. You did, Julian said softly. You signed it. Remember? That night at the kitchen table. I told you it was just a formality. That I needed your signature because we were married, but that it wouldn't affect you. That I'd handle everything. The memory surfaced like something dredged from deep water. She had signed something. Multiple somethings. He'd been so excited, so full of hope about his business idea. The tech startup that was going to change everything. She'd been exhausted from her double shift at the diner. But she'd signed because she trusted him. Because he'd promised her they were building a future together. That loan, Julian continued, his voice tight, was the seed money for everything. The app. The company. The contracts. Everything I built, it started with that. With your signature. Your credit. Your belief in me when no one else would take the risk. Amara's hands shook. The paper crinkled between her fingers. When the company took off, Julian said, when the investors came in and we started making real money, I was so caught up in it. In the success. In proving everyone wrong. I told myself I'd done it. That I'd made it happen. His voice cracked. But I didn't. We did. And when things got complicated, when I started feeling like I was losing myself in all of it, I ran. I convinced myself I needed space. Freedom. That I couldn't be the man I needed to be if I was still. If you were still tied to me, Amara finished, her voice barely above a whisper. Julian flinched. I was wrong. The words hung in the air between them, heavy and insufficient. Amara looked down at the paper again, at her name printed in black and white. Evidence of a version of herself she'd almost forgotten. The woman who'd believed love meant sacrifice. Who'd given everything and expected nothing in return. You left me with nothing, Julian. Her voice was steady now, but there was steel beneath it. I called you. I texted. I showed up at your office, and your assistant told me you'd moved. No forwarding address. No explanation. I thought, she swallowed hard. I thought maybe I'd done something wrong. That I wasn't enough. That I'd failed you somehow. God, Amara, no. I lost our apartment, she continued, the words spilling out now, unstoppable. I couldn't make rent on my own. I moved in with my cousin for a while, but that didn't last. I worked 3 jobs just to keep my head above water. And when I couldn't anymore, when I was so tired I couldn't see straight, I came here. To this place. Because Mrs. Pritchard needed help and didn't ask questions. She gestured around them, at the farm, the animals, the cottage that leaked when it rained. This is what my life became. And you, her voice broke. You were out there getting rich off of our dream. Julian's jaw clenched. His eyes were red-rimmed, glassy. I didn't know you were here. I didn't know you were. I thought you'd moved on. That you'd found someone better. Someone who wouldn't. He stopped, dragging a hand over his face. A month ago, I was going through old records. My accountant flagged something about that original loan. About needing to update the documentation. And that's when I saw it. Your name. Your credit. Your everything. He took a step closer to the fence, his knuckles white as he gripped the weathered wood. I started looking for you. It took weeks. I hired people. I called everyone we used to know. And when I finally found you, when someone told me you were here, working on a farm. His voice shattered. I realized what I'd done, what I'd taken from you. And I knew I had to come. I had to see you. I had to. What? Amara's eyes flashed. Apologize? Make yourself feel better? Throw some money at me and call it even. No. Julian's voice was fierce now, raw. I came to give you what's yours. He reached into his other pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. He held it out to her, and when she didn't take it, he set it on the fence post between them. That's a check, he said quietly. For half of everything. The company. The investments. The properties. All of it. It's legally yours. My lawyer already drew up the papers. You don't have to sign anything. You don't have to see me again. But I'm not walking away this time without making sure you get what you were always owed. Amara stared at the envelope like it might bite her. Half of everything. She thought of the years she'd spent in this place. The loneliness. The nights she'd cried herself to sleep, wondering what she'd done wrong. The mornings she'd woken up to feed pigs instead of pursuing the nursing degree she'd once dreamed of. And now he was here, offering her a way out. Offering her millions. But all she could feel was the ache in her chest where her heart used to be. I don't want your money, Julian, she said, her voice breaking. Then what do you want? He asked desperately. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the truth written in every line of his face. He wasn't here to ease his guilt. He was here because he was broken. Because he'd spent 6 years running from the one thing that had ever mattered. I want to know why, she whispered. Why you left. Why you stopped loving me. Julian's face crumpled. I never stopped, he said, his voice raw and aching. I was just too much of a coward to admit I didn't deserve you. The words shattered something inside her. And for the first time in 6 years, Amara let herself cry. Amara turned away from him before the tears could fall too freely. She wouldn't give him that. Not yet. Not when her chest felt like it was caving in. Not when every word he'd spoken had reopened wounds she'd spent years trying to scar over. She heard him shift behind the fence, heard the creak of wood as he leaned against it, but she didn't turn back. You should go, she said, her voice hoarse. Amara. I mean it, Julian. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, smearing dirt across her cheek. You can't just show up here with your apologies and your money and expect everything to be okay. That's not how this works. I know that. Do you? She spun around, her eyes blazing. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're trying to buy your way out of guilt. Write a check, clear your conscience, go back to your fancy life, and tell yourself you did the right thing. Julian's face tightened. That's not what this is. Then what is it? She stepped closer to the fence, close enough to see the exhaustion etched into his features, the way his jaw worked like he was chewing on words he didn't know how to say. You left me, Julian. You made your choice 6 years ago. And now you want me to what? Forgive you? Thank you for finally acknowledging what you stole from me. I want you to let me make it right. You can't. The words came out sharp, final. Some things can't be fixed with money. He flinched, and something about that small movement, the way he physically absorbed her anger, made her stomach twist. She looked away, focusing on the pigs instead. Rosie was lying in a patch of sun, content and oblivious. Amara envied her. I worked for the Pritchards for 4 years, she said quietly. 4 years of waking up at dawn, of smelling like animals, of being too tired to even dream anymore. Do you know what that does to a person? To give up on yourself so completely that you forget you ever wanted more. I'm sorry, Julian whispered. Sorry doesn't change anything. I know. Silence stretched between them, thick and uncomfortable. A chicken clucked somewhere in the distance. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of pine and earth. Julian cleared his throat. I didn't come here expecting forgiveness. I came because I owed you the truth. And because, he hesitated, because I needed to see that you were okay. Amara laughed bitterly. Do I look okay to you? You look. He paused, his eyes scanning her face like he was seeing her for the first time. You look tired. And angry. And like you've been carrying weight that was never yours to carry. That's poetic, she said dryly. Did you practice that on the drive here? Amara. Don't. She held up a hand. Don't act like you know me. You don't get to show up after 6 years and pretend you understand what my life has been like. You have no idea. You're right, Julian said, his voice steady. I don't know. But I want to. She shook her head, disbelief coloring her features. Why? Why does it matter now? You got what you wanted. You're successful. Rich. You don't need me. Maybe I do. The words landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples through the air between them. Amara stared at him, her heart pounding in her chest. Don't do that. Don't make this about feelings. This is about debt. About what's owed. That's all. Is it? Julian's eyes searched hers, and there was something raw in them, something desperate. Because from where I'm standing, it feels like we're both running from the same thing. And what's that? The fact that walking away from you was the biggest mistake of my life. Amara's breath hitched. She wanted to yell at him, to tell him it was too late, that he'd forfeited the right to say things like that when he'd chosen his ambition over their marriage. But the words stuck in her throat, tangled up with feelings she didn't want to name. I don't believe you, she said finally, her voice small. I don't blame you. You hurt me, Julian. You destroyed me. I know. And you think you can just fix it? By coming here? By throwing money at me? No. He shook his head. I don't think I can fix it. But I had to try. I had to see you. I had to, he stopped, his voice breaking. I had to know if there was any part of you that might be willing to. To what? She demanded. To let you back in? To forget what you did? To act like the last 6 years didn't happen? No, Julian said quietly. I don't expect any of that. I want you to know that I see you now. Really see you. And I'm sorry it took me this long to realize what I lost. Amara's hands balled into fists at her sides. She wanted to stay angry. She needed to stay angry. Because anger was safe. Anger protected her from the part of her that still remembered what it felt like to love him. I need you to leave, she said, her voice trembling. Julian nodded slowly. He picked up the envelope from the fence post and held it out to her one more time. Please, take it. Even if you never want to see me again, take what's yours. Amara didn't move. Julian set the envelope down carefully on the post and stepped back. I'm staying at the inn in town, the little one near the church. If you change your mind about anything, I'll be there for the next few days. He turned toward his car, then paused. I meant what I said, Amara. I never stopped loving you. I was just too broken to know what to do with it. And then he was gone. The car pulled away slowly, kicking up dust as it disappeared down the dirt road. Amara stood there, frozen, staring at the envelope on the fence post. Inside, her heart was screaming at her to run after him, to demand more answers, to tell him that she'd never stopped loving him either, even when she hated him. But her feet wouldn't move, because loving Julian had nearly destroyed her once, and she wasn't sure she was strong enough to survive it again. 3 days passed. 3 days of Amara pretending the envelope didn't exist. She left it on the fence post, even when the morning dew dampened it, even when the wind threatened to carry it away. She told herself she didn't care, that whatever was inside didn't matter. But every time she walked past it, her steps slowed. On the 4th morning, Mrs. Pritchard appeared at the cottage door just as Amara was pulling on her boots. Morning, Amara, the older woman said, her weathered face creased with concern. Got a moment? Amara straightened. Of course. Is everything all right? Mrs. Pritchard hesitated, wringing her hands in her apron. Well, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Harold, my husband, he's taken ill. We need to go to the city, to the hospital. The doctors want to run some tests. Oh, Mrs. Pritchard, I'm so sorry. He'll be fine, dear. Stubborn as an ox, that one. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. But we'll be gone for at least a week, maybe more. And I hate to ask this of you, but we need someone to watch the farm. Not just the animals, but the property. We've had some trouble lately. Teenagers from town, vandalism, that sort of thing. Amara nodded. Of course. I'll take care of everything. There's one more thing. Mrs. Pritchard's expression shifted, uncomfortable. That man who came by the other day. The one in the fancy car. He came back yesterday. Amara's heart stuttered. What? He was asking about you. About the farm. About whether we needed any help. Mrs. Pritchard's eyes narrowed slightly. I told him we were managing fine, but he seemed persistent. Said he was worried about you being here alone. Heat flooded Amara's face. He had no right. That's what I told him, Mrs. Pritchard said quickly. But then he offered to help watch the place while we're gone. Said he'd stay in town, but check in regularly. Make sure you're safe. She paused. I told him I'd ask you first. But honestly, dear, it wouldn't hurt to have someone else around. Just in case. Amara wanted to refuse. Wanted to tell Mrs. Pritchard that Julian's concern was 6 years too late, that she didn't need his protection or his help. But she could see the worry in the older woman's eyes. and she knew that Mrs. Pritchard had given her a home when she had nowhere else to go. "All right," Amara said quietly. "If it makes you feel better." Mrs. Pritchard's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank you, dear. I know it's an imposition. But Harold and we worry about you out here." By noon, the Pritchards were gone. Their old truck disappeared down the road in a cloud of dust, leaving Amara alone with the animals and the too quiet morning. She was mucking out one of the stalls when she heard the car. Not the expensive sedan this time, but a modest rental. Julian climbed out wearing jeans and a plain t-shirt, looking more human than he had days ago. Less like a millionaire and more like the man she used to know. He carried 2 bags of groceries and a toolbox. "Thought you might need some supplies," he said, setting them down near the barn door. And Mrs. Pritchard mentioned the gate was broken. Amara leaned on her shovel, eyeing him warily. "You don't have to do this." "I know." He met her gaze. "But I'm here anyway." She wanted to argue, wanted to send him away. But the truth was the gate was broken, and the feed was running low. And the thought of being out here alone for a week made something in her chest tighten. "Fine," she said. "But stay out of my way." Julian's mouth quirked in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Yes, ma'am." They worked in silence for the first few hours. Julian fixed the gate while Amara finished the stalls. He was surprisingly handy, his movements efficient and sure, like he'd done manual labor before. Maybe he had, back when they were struggling. Back when success was just a dream they whispered about in the dark. By late afternoon, the sun was brutal. Amara's shirt clung to her back, and her arms ached from hauling feed. She was refilling the water troughs when Julian appeared beside her, holding out a bottle of cold water. "Thought you could use this," he said. She took it without a word, twisting off the cap and drinking deeply. The cold was a shock to her system, perfect and necessary. "Thank you," she said grudgingly. Julian nodded, wiping sweat from his forehead. "It's hotter than I remember. Being out here, doing this kind of work. You get used to it." "Do you?" His voice was soft, careful. "Get used to it, Amara set the water bottle down. "You don't have a choice. You adapt or you drown." "Is that what you did?" "Adapt." She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the question beneath the question. "Did you survive? Did you heal? Did you move on?" "I'm still here," she said finally. "Make of that what you will." Julian was quiet for a moment then. "For what it's worth, I think you're incredible. What you've built here. What you've survived. It's more than I ever could have done." "Don't do that," Amara said, her voice tight. "Don't romanticize my suffering." "I'm not." "Yes, you are." She turned to face him fully. "You're standing here, looking at me like I'm some kind of inspiration. Like my pain is beautiful. But it's not. It's just pain. And it's pain you caused." Julian's jaw clenched. "You're right. I'm sorry." "Stop apologizing," she snapped. "It doesn't change anything." "Then what do you want from me, Amara?" His voice rose, frustration bleeding through. "Tell me what to do. Tell me how to make this right." "I don't know." The words burst out of her, raw and desperate. "I don't know what I want. I don't know how to feel. You show up here, and suddenly everything I've spent years burying is right back at the surface and Her voice broke. Julian stepped closer, his hand reaching out like he wanted to touch her, then dropping back to his side. "I'm not trying to hurt you again," he said quietly. "I'm just trying to be here. If you'll let me." Amara closed her eyes, exhaustion washing over her. "I don't know if I can." "Then let's just start with today," Julian said. "One day at a time. No pressure. No expectations. Just let me help." She opened her eyes and found him watching her with something that looked like hope. Fragile and uncertain, but real. Against her better judgment, she nodded. "One day," she said. "That's all I'm promising." "One day is enough," Julian said softly. And for the first time since he'd arrived, Amara felt something other than anger. She felt the faintest flicker of possibility. The next morning arrived with an unexpected storm. Rain hammered the cottage roof, turning the dirt roads into rivers of mud. Thunder rolled across the valley, low and menacing, and the animals huddled together in the barn, restless and uneasy. Amara woke to the sound of something crashing outside. She threw on her overalls and ran out into the downpour, her boots sinking into the muck with every step. One of the fence panels had collapsed, and 3 of the pigs were making a break for freedom, squealing and slipping through the gap. "No, no, no, Rosie, get back here." She lunged for the nearest pig, but it dodged her easily, splashing through puddles with surprising speed. The rain blurred her vision, soaked through her clothes. She was about to lose them all when a figure appeared beside her. Julian. He was already drenched, his t-shirt plastered to his skin, but he didn't hesitate. He moved with purpose, herding the pigs back toward the barn with practiced efficiency. Together, they managed to corner Rosie and the others, guiding them back through the broken fence. By the time they got the last pig secured and the gap temporarily blocked with wooden planks, they were both shivering and covered in mud. Inside, Julian shouted over the rain. "Before we both catch pneumonia." Amara didn't argue. The cottage was small, one room that served as bedroom, kitchen, and living space. Amara's bed was shoved against one wall, a worn quilt folded neatly on top. A tiny wood stove sat in the corner, cold and unused despite the chill in the air. She grabbed 2 towels from the narrow cupboard and tossed one to Julian. He caught it, wringing water from his hair. "Thank you," Amara said, her teeth chattering. "For helping." "Of course." He looked around the space, taking in the cramped quarters, the bare walls, the single chair at the small table. His expression tightened. "This is where you've been living?" "Don't," she warned. "Don't what?" "Don't pity me." She peeled off her wet overalls, revealing the tank top and leggings underneath. "This place kept me alive. It's more than I had 6 years ago." Julian's face crumpled. He sat heavily on the chair, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. "God, Amara, what did I do to you?" She wrapped the towel around her shoulders, watching him. Watching this man, this stranger who used to be her everything, fall apart in her tiny cottage. "You want to know what happened?" she asked quietly. "After you left?" He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "Yes." Amara took a breath. She'd never spoken about this. Not to anyone. But something about the rain, the rawness of the moment, made the words come easier. "I called you 63 times, she began. "I counted. 63 calls, and you never answered. Not once. I thought maybe you'd been in an accident. That something terrible had happened. So I went to your office." She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her hands. "Your assistant, some woman I'd never met, she looked at me like I was garbage. Told me you'd instructed her not to let me through. That you'd moved and didn't leave a forwarding address." Amara's voice cracked. "I stood there in the lobby of your fancy building, and I realized you'd erased me. Like I never existed." Julian's hands curled into fists. "I lost the apartment 2 months later," she continued. "Couldn't make rent. I moved in with my cousin, but her boyfriend didn't like me being there. Said I was a freeloader." She laughed bitterly. "So I left. Slept in my car for a while. Worked whatever jobs I could find. But I was so tired, Julian. So tired I couldn't think straight. Couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. Amara, one night, I parked outside a church and just broke down. I cried until I couldn't breathe. Until I thought maybe it would be easier to just stop." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "And then Mrs. Pritchard found me." Julian's breath hitched. She was leaving evening service. She saw me in my car, saw me crying, and she knocked on my window. Asked if I was okay. And when I told her I had nowhere to go, she brought me here. Gave me this cottage. Gave me work. Gave me a reason to wake up. Amara wiped at her eyes with the towel. "So yes, this place is small. Yes, the work is hard. But it saved my life. And I won't let you feel sorry for me because of it." Julian stood abruptly, pacing the small space like a caged animal. "I didn't know. I swear to God, Amara, I didn't know it was that bad. I thought." "What did you think?" she demanded. "That I'd just move on? Find someone new? Live happily ever after?" "Yes," he said hoarsely. "I told myself you were better off without me. That you'd find someone who could give you stability. Someone who wasn't obsessed with building an empire. Someone who deserved you." "That's a lie." Julian stopped pacing. "What?" "You told yourself that because it was easier than admitting the truth." Amara stood, facing him across the small room. "You left because you were scared. Because success was finally in reach and you didn't want anything, or anyone, holding you back. Including me." "That's not." "It is," she said firmly. "And maybe part of you thought you were doing me a favor. But Julian, the kindest thing you could have done was tell me the truth. Not leave me wondering what I did wrong. Not let me think I wasn't enough." His face shattered. "You were always enough. You were everything. Then why wasn't I worth fighting for?" The question hung between them, unanswerable. Julian sank back into the chair, defeated. "I don't know. I was stupid. Selfish. I got caught up in the money, the investors, the pressure to succeed. And somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that the man you married wasn't the man I needed to become. What does that even mean? It means I looked at you and saw all my failures, he said quietly. Every time you worked those extra shifts to support us. Every time you sacrificed something you wanted so I could chase my dreams. I felt like I was drowning in debt, not financial debt, but emotional debt. Like I could never be enough for you. So I ran. Amara stared at him, stunned. You resented me. For helping you. No, Julian said quickly. I resented myself. For needing you so much. For being weak. Needing someone isn't weakness, Julian. I know that now. His voice broke. But 6 years ago, I was too proud to see it. And by the time I realized what I'd done, I thought it was too late. That you'd hate me. That I'd destroyed any chance we had. Amara crossed her arms, her heart aching. You were right. You did. Julian nodded slowly, accepting the blow. The rain continued to drum against the roof, filling the silence between them. Outside, thunder rumbled like a warning. Finally, Amara spoke. Why now? Why come back now, after all this time? Julian reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. He held it out to her. It was a photograph. Old, creased, faded at the edges. Amara took it with trembling fingers. It was a picture of them. Taken on their wedding day. A simple courthouse ceremony, nothing fancy. She was wearing a white sundress from a thrift store. He was in slacks and a borrowed tie. They were laughing, their foreheads pressed together, completely unaware that 6 years later, they'd be standing in a tiny cottage, worlds apart. I've carried that with me every day since I left, Julian said softly. Every single day. It's the only thing that kept me from forgetting who I used to be. Amara's vision blurred. I don't know if you can ever forgive me, Julian continued. I don't know if I deserve it. But I need you to know, leaving you wasn't about you not being enough. It was about me being too broken to recognize that you were the only thing holding me together. A tear slipped down Amara's cheek. And for the first time since he'd come back, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, he was telling the truth. The storm raged for 2 more days. They were trapped together, not by force, but by circumstance. The roads became impassable, thick with mud that would swallow a car whole. Julian's rental sat useless outside the barn, and the cottage became their shared shelter against the relentless weather. On the second day, something shifted. Amara woke to the smell of coffee. Real coffee, not the instant kind she'd been rationing. She sat up, disoriented, and found Julian at the tiny stove, carefully pouring hot water through a makeshift filter he'd constructed from a clean cloth and the groceries he'd brought days ago. Morning, he said without turning around. Thought you could use something decent to wake up to. She didn't respond immediately, just watched him move through her space with unexpected ease. He'd slept on the floor the past 2 nights, using his jacket as a pillow, refusing to take the bed even when she'd offered. Now his hair was mussed, his t-shirt wrinkled, and there was something achingly familiar about the domestic simplicity of the moment. Thank you, she said quietly. He turned, offering her a chipped mug. Their fingers brushed as she took it, and neither of them pulled away immediately. How do you take it? He asked. I realized I don't remember. Black, she said. With a little honey, if there is any. A smile ghosted across his lips. That's different. You used to take it with cream and sugar. I used to be able to afford cream and sugar. The words came out harsher than she intended, and Julian's smile faded. But instead of retreating, he nodded. Fair point. He found a jar of honey in one of the bags and stirred a spoonful into her coffee. The gesture was small, careful, tender. They sat at the small table, knees almost touching in the cramped space, drinking in comfortable silence while rain drummed against the windows. Tell me about the nursing degree, Julian said suddenly. You used to talk about it all the time. About wanting to help people. Amara's grip tightened on her mug. That was a long time ago. But you still wanted it, didn't you? Before you left and I had to survive instead of dream? She met his eyes. Yeah. I wanted it. Julian was quiet for a moment. It's not too late, you know. You could still. Julian, I'm 32 years old. I'd have to start completely over. Get my prerequisites, apply to programs, figure out how to pay for it all. She shook her head. It's a nice fantasy, but it's not realistic. What if it could be? She frowned. What are you talking about? That envelope. The one you still haven't opened. He leaned forward. It's enough to pay for school 10 times over. Enough to never have to work another day on this farm if you don't want to. Enough to build whatever life you want. I told you, I don't want your money. It's not my money. Julian said firmly. It's yours. It always was. And maybe part of making things right is giving you back the future I stole. Amara's throat tightened. She wanted to argue, to push back against the hope blooming dangerously in her chest. But before she could speak, a loud crash came from outside. They both jumped up. Through the window, they could see one of the barn doors had been ripped off its hinges by the wind, swinging wildly in the storm. We have to secure it, Amara said, already grabbing her rain jacket. Or the animals will panic. I'll go, Julian said. Not alone, you won't. They ran out together into the downpour. The wind was vicious, tearing at their clothes and hair. The barn door swung like a pendulum, its hinges screaming. Julian reached it first, grabbing one edge while Amara grabbed the other. Together, they wrestled it back into position, their feet sliding in the mud. Hold it steady, Amara shouted over the roar of the storm. Julian braced himself against the door while she fumbled with the rope, trying to tie it down. Her fingers were numb, clumsy with cold. The rope slipped once, twice. Come on, she muttered through gritted teeth. Here. Julian's hand covered hers, steadying her shaking fingers. Together, they worked in tandem, their hands moving as one, until finally the knot held. The door secured, they stumbled back, gasping and soaked through. And then Amara started laughing. It burst out of her unexpectedly, breathless, slightly manic laughter that she couldn't control. Julian stared at her like she'd lost her mind, and that only made her laugh harder. What? He asked, bewildered. This, she gasped, gesturing around them, at the mud, the rain, the ridiculous situation. 6 years ago, you were closing million-dollar deals in boardrooms. And now you're standing in a storm, covered in pig farm mud, tying down barn doors. Julian looked down at himself, at his ruined clothes and mud-caked shoes, and something broke open in his face. He started laughing too, deep, genuine laughter that shook his shoulders. God, he said, wiping rain from his eyes. My assistant would have a heart attack if she could see me right now. Your shareholders might fire you. Worth it. Their laughter faded into breathless silence. They stood there in the rain, looking at each other, and something passed between them, a recognition. A memory of who they used to be, before the money, before the pain. I miss this, Julian said softly. I missed us. Amara's smile dimmed. There is no us anymore, Julian. Isn't there? He took a step closer. Because standing here with you, fighting storms and fixing fences, this is the most real I've felt in 6 years. Don't, she whispered. Don't make this into something it's not. Then what is it? She didn't have an answer. Julian reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his hand cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing away a raindrop, or maybe a tear. I know I hurt you, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I know I don't deserve another chance. But Amara, being here with you, it feels like coming home. And I don't know if that means anything to you anymore, but I needed you to know. Her breath caught. Every logical part of her brain screamed to step back, to protect herself. But her heart, her traitorous, stubborn heart, remembered what it felt like to love him. I can't do this, she said, even as she leaned into his touch. I can't let you back in just to watch you leave again. I won't leave. You don't know that. Yes, I do. His forehead pressed against hers, warm despite the cold rain. Because this time, I know what I'm walking away from. And I can't. I won't. For a long moment they stood there, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. Then Amara pulled back. If you mean that, she said quietly, then prove it. Don't just say pretty words. Show me. Julian nodded, his eyes bright with something that looked like determination. I will, he promised. Every single day if you'll let me. And despite everything, despite the pain, the betrayal, the 6 years of silence, Amara felt something dangerous bloom in her chest. Hope. Have you ever given someone a second chance, even when every logical part of you said not to? Do you believe people can really change, or are we all just repeating the same patterns? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. The storm finally broke on the 3rd day. Sunlight streamed through the cottage windows, warm and golden, as if the world was apologizing for its violence. The roads were still thick with mud, but passable. Julian's phone, which had been dead for 2 days, buzzed back to life with a vengeance. Amara was feeding the chickens when she heard his voice through the open barn door. He was pacing near his car, phone pressed to his ear, and even from a distance, she could hear the tension in his tone. I understand that, Martin, but I told you I needed this week. No, I can't just. It's not that simple. She tried not to eavesdrop, but sound carried easily in the morning stillness. The merger can wait a few more days, because there are more important things then. Julian's voice rose, then dropped. Fine. Send me the documents. I'll review them tonight. He ended the call and stood there for a moment, staring at his phone like it had betrayed him. Amara approached slowly, a bucket of feed in her hands. Everything okay? Julian turned, and she saw the exhaustion etched into his features. The ease that had developed between them over the past 2 days had vanished, replaced by something tight and strained. Work, he said curtly. There's a situation that needs my attention. Oh, she set the bucket down. Do you need to go back? No. The word came out too sharp. He softened immediately. I mean, not yet. I can handle it remotely for now. But over the next few hours, his phone rang constantly. Emails flooded in. He retreated to his car for privacy, his voice carrying through the open windows, clipped, professional, increasingly frustrated. Amara tried to give him space, but something cold was settling in her stomach. She recognized this version of Julian. The one who got absorbed by work, who let everything else fade into the background. By afternoon, he was in the cottage, laptop balanced on the tiny table, papers spread across every available surface. He barely looked up when she came in. I made lunch, she said quietly. If you're hungry. Not right now. I need to finish this. Julian. Please, Amara. I just need an hour. She bit her lip and left him alone. But an hour turned into 3. Then 6. By evening, Amara had finished all the farm work alone. She'd fed and watered the animals, repaired another section of fence, mucked out the stalls. Her body ached, and when she returned to the cottage, she found Julian exactly where she'd left him, hunched over his laptop, his face illuminated by the blue glow of the screen. Julian. He held up a finger without looking at her. 1 second. She waited. 1 second became 5 minutes. Julian, she said again, harder this time. What? He looked up, irritation flashing across his features. Then he seemed to catch himself. Sorry. I'm sorry. This is just, it's important. More important than why you came here? He ran a hand through his hair. That's not fair. Isn't it? She crossed her arms. You've been on that phone all day. You promised me you wouldn't leave, but you're already gone. I'm right here. No, you're not. Her voice cracked. You're exactly where you were 6 years ago. Lost in your work, in your success, in everything that matters more than me. Julian closed his laptop slowly. Amara, I have responsibilities. People depending on me. I can't just walk away from. From what? Your empire? She laughed bitterly. The same empire you built on my back? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? She stepped closer, anger and hurt warring in her chest. Because it sounds like you're making excuses. Just like you did before. I'm not making excuses, Julian said, his own frustration rising. I'm trying to balance both. To be here for you while still managing my business. Is that so wrong? Yes. The word exploded out of her. Because you can't do both, Julian. You never could. That's why you left in the first place. I left because I was an idiot, he shot back. But I'm not that person anymore. I'm trying to do better. To be better. Are you? She gestured at the laptop, the papers, the phone that hadn't stopped buzzing. Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly the same. Julian stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. What do you want from me, Amara? To just abandon everything? To throw away the company, the jobs, the people who rely on me? I want you to prove that I matter more than all of it. Her voice broke. I want you to choose me. Not as an afterthought. Not when it's convenient. But as the priority. The way I chose you for years. I am choosing you. No, you're not. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You're trying to have it both ways. To keep your perfect life and somehow squeeze me into it. But it doesn't work like that, Julian. It never did. He stared at her, his jaw clenched. So what are you saying? That I should give it all up? Walk away from everything I built? I'm saying you need to figure out what actually matters to you. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Because if it's the money, the power, the success, then you should go. Save us both the heartbreak. And if it's you? His eyes blazed. If I say it's you, will you even believe me? Or are you so convinced I'm going to leave that you're pushing me away first? The words hit like a slap. That's not, she faltered. Isn't it? Julian took a step toward her. You've been waiting for me to fail. To prove that you were right not to trust me. Well, congratulations, Amara. I'm human. I have a business to run. I can't just pretend the last 6 years didn't happen. I never asked you to pretend. You're asking me to be perfect, he interrupted. To never make a mistake. To somehow erase all the damage I caused by being whatever impossible version of me you've created in your head. That's not true. Isn't it? He grabbed his jacket from the chair. You know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe I can't do this. Maybe I'm still the same selfish bastard who walked away before. Julian, I'll stay at the inn tonight. His voice was cold now, distant. Give you some space. That's what you want, right? That's not what but the words died in her throat. Because maybe it was. Julian paused at the door, his hand on the frame. For a moment, she thought he might turn back. Might fight for them the way she'd always hoped he would. Instead, he said, I thought we could make this work. I really did. But maybe some things are just too broken to fix. And then he was gone. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like finality. Amara stood in the empty cottage, her heart splintering into pieces she wasn't sure she could put back together. Because he was right. She had been waiting for him to leave. Expecting it. Maybe even orchestrating it, pushing him away before he could hurt her again. But knowing that didn't make the pain any less real. She sank onto the bed, pulled her knees to her chest, and let herself break. Outside, she heard his car start. Heard the tires crunch over gravel as he drove away. And she wondered if this was it. If this was how their story ended. Not with a grand gesture or a final goodbye, but with anger and accusations and two broken people who loved each other, but didn't know how to stop hurting each other. The cottage felt impossibly empty. And for the first time in years, Amara wasn't sure she was strong enough to survive the loneliness. 3 days passed in heavy silence. Amara threw herself into the work with mechanical precision. Wake before dawn. Feed the animals. Muck the stalls. Repair fences. Collapse into bed. Repeat. She didn't let herself think. Didn't let herself feel. Because feeling meant acknowledging the gaping wound Julian had left behind. Again. On the 4th morning, Mrs. Pritchard called. How's everything, dear? The older woman's voice crackled through the phone. Harold's doing much better. We should be home in a few days. That's wonderful, Amara said, injecting false brightness into her voice. Everything's fine here. Animals are all healthy. And that young man, Julian, was it? Is he still helping out? Amara's throat tightened. No. He had to leave. Business matters. There was a pause. I see. Well, you take care of yourself, dear. You sound tired. After the call ended, Amara stood in the cottage, phone in hand, staring at nothing. The envelope still sat on the fence post outside, weathered now but intact. She'd walked past it dozens of times and never touched it. She thought about Julian's words. It's yours. It always was. She thought about the nursing degree she'd abandoned. The dreams she'd buried so deep she'd almost forgotten they existed. She thought about the photograph, the two of them on their wedding day, laughing like the world couldn't touch them. And she realized something that made her knees weak. She was still in love with him. Not with the memory of him. Not with who he used to be. But with the man he was now, flawed, complicated, trying desperately to be better even when he didn't know how. And she'd pushed him away. Amara sank onto the bed, her hands shaking. She'd spent so many years protecting herself, building walls so high that nothing could hurt her again. But those walls hadn't just kept Julian out. They'd kept her trapped inside. She'd accused him of not choosing her. But when had she chosen him? When had she been willing to risk the safety of her anger for the vulnerability of forgiveness? The truth was she'd been terrified. Terrified that if she let him back in, he'd leave again, and this time it would destroy her completely. So she'd sabotaged it first. Found reasons to push him away. Convinced herself it was inevitable. But what if it wasn't? What if the real courage wasn't in staying guarded, but in being brave enough to try again? Amara stood abruptly and grabbed her jacket. The inn was a small, modest building near the church, the only lodging in town. Amara's heart hammered as she walked through the door, mud still caking her boots. The elderly man at the front desk looked up in surprise. Can I help you, miss? Julian Hartwell. What room? Room 7. Up the stairs, last door on the right. He hesitated. But I'm not sure he's taking visitors. He specifically said. Amara was already moving. She took the stairs 2 at a time, her breath coming fast. When she reached room 7, she raised her hand to knock, then froze. What if he didn't want to see her? What if she'd burned that bridge completely? What if she'd come all this way only to discover he'd already given up? Before she could spiral further, the door opened. Julian stood there, looking as wrecked as she felt. His hair was disheveled, his eyes red-rimmed like he hadn't slept. He was wearing the same clothes from 3 days ago, wrinkled and worn. Amara. Her name came out like a prayer. I'm sorry, she blurted. I'm so sorry. You were right. About all of it. I was pushing you away because I was scared, and I... Stop. He stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind him. You have nothing to apologize for. I'm the one who... Let me finish, she interrupted. Please. Julian nodded, his eyes searching her face. Amara took a shaky breath. I spent 6 years convincing myself I was fine. That I didn't need anyone. That being alone was safer than risking my heart again. And when you came back, it terrified me. Because suddenly all those feelings I'd buried came rushing back, and I didn't know what to do with them. Amara, I accused you of not choosing me, she continued, tears streaming down her face now. But the truth is, I never gave you the chance. I was so busy waiting for you to fail, so convinced you'd leave, that I didn't see how hard you were trying. How much you'd changed. Julian's jaw clenched, emotion flickering across his features. When you left the other night, I told myself it was proof. That I was right not to trust you. But I wasn't right, Julian. I was just scared. She stepped closer. And I'm tired of being scared. I'm tired of protecting myself from the one person who actually wants to stay. You don't know that I'll stay, Julian said quietly. I want to. God, I want to. But what if I mess up again? What if the work pulls me away and I... Then we'll figure it out, Amara said firmly. Together. The way we should have the first time. Julian stared at her, hope and fear warring in his eyes. I don't deserve you. Maybe not. But I don't want perfect, Julian. I want real. I want someone who fights for us even when it's hard. Someone who shows up, even when they're scared. She reached for his hand. I want you. His breath caught. I quit. What? The company. I sold my shares to my business partner. Signed the papers yesterday. He pulled a document from his pocket, unfolding it with trembling hands. I realized something when I left your cottage. I spent 6 years building an empire, and it never made me happy. Not once. But 3 days with you? Fixing fences and herding pigs and drinking bad coffee in a tiny cottage. His voice cracked. That was the first time I'd felt alive since I left. Amara's hand flew to her mouth. I don't want to be a millionaire anymore, Julian said, stepping closer until they were inches apart. I don't want boardrooms and mergers and phones that never stop ringing. I want mornings with you. I want to help you go back to school. I want to build something real. Not a company, but a life. With you. Julian. I know I hurt you. I know I don't deserve another chance. But if you'll have me, if you'll let me spend the rest of my life proving that you're the only thing that matters, I swear to God, Amara, I will never walk away again. She couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. Could only stare at this man who'd just given up everything for her. Say something, Julian whispered. Please. Instead of words, Amara closed the distance between them. She kissed him. It was desperate and tender and tasted like tears and 6 years of longing. Julian's arms came around her, pulling her close, and she melted into him. Into the solid reality of his presence, his warmth, his steadiness. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Julian pressed his forehead to hers. Is that a yes? He asked, a tremulous smile tugging at his lips. It's a yes, she whispered. To all of it. To us. To starting over. To building something real. Together. Together. He kissed her again, softer this time, reverent. Like she was something precious he'd thought he'd lost forever. I love you, he murmured against her lips. I never stopped. I love you too, she said. Even when I hated you. Even when I tried not to. I never stopped either. They stood there in the narrow hallway, holding each other like they were the only two people in the world. And for the first time in 6 years, Amara felt whole. 6 months later, the morning sun filtered through the kitchen window of their new home. A modest house on the outskirts of town, close enough to the Pritchard's farm that Amara could still help when needed, but theirs. Truly theirs. Amara stood at the stove, flipping pancakes while humming softly. She wore scrubs, navy blue with small white stars scattered across the fabric. Her nursing school badge hung from a lanyard around her neck, still feeling foreign and wonderful at the same time. Arms wrapped around her waist from behind. Good morning, wife, Julian murmured, pressing a kiss to her neck. She leaned back into him, smiling. Good morning, husband. The word still felt new. They'd remarried quietly 3 months ago, another courthouse ceremony, but this time with Mrs. and Mr. Pritchard as witnesses. No fancy dress. No elaborate plans. Just two people who'd found their way back to each other, promising to do it right this time. How'd you sleep? Julian asked, reaching around her to steal a piece of bacon from the plate. Better than you, apparently. She swatted his hand playfully. You were up late again, weren't you? Couldn't help it. He released her to pour 2 cups of coffee, hers with honey, his black. Got inspired. Amara turned off the stove and carried the pancakes to their small dining table. Through the window, she could see the vegetable garden Julian had planted last month. It wasn't much yet, just a few rows of tomatoes, peppers, and herbs, but it was growing. Like them. Inspired by what? She asked, settling into her chair. Julian sat across from her, that familiar light in his eyes, the one that used to mean he was chasing some impossible dream. But this time it felt different. Grounded. I've been working on something, he said, pulling out his laptop. Remember how I told you I wanted to do something meaningful? Something that actually helped people. Amara nodded, spearing a piece of pancake. I've been developing an app, completely free, that connects people in rural communities with resources. Healthcare, education, job opportunities. Everything I learned from the business world, but used for good this time. He turned the laptop toward her. And I want to launch it through a foundation. The Amara Foundation. She nearly dropped her fork. What? You gave up everything to help me build something I didn't deserve, Julian said softly. Let me give that back. Let me help other people the way you helped me. Let your name stand for something beautiful. Tears pricked her eyes. Julian, I already filed the paperwork, he continued quickly. It's a non-profit. Any profits go back into the communities. And I want you involved when you're ready after school. Your insight, your experience, your heart. That's what should drive it. Amara reached across the table and took his hand. You really did change, didn't you? You changed me, he corrected. You showed me what actually matters. And I'm never forgetting that again. They ate breakfast together, talking about her upcoming exam, his meeting with potential donors, the leak in the bathroom they needed to fix. Ordinary things. Beautiful things. After breakfast, as Amara gathered her books for class, Julian handed her something. The photograph. The one from their first wedding, now in a new frame. I want you to keep this, he said. As a reminder. Not of what we lost, but of what we fought to get back. She traced her fingers over their younger faces, so hopeful, so naive. We've been through hell, haven't we? And came out the other side. He kissed her forehead. Together. That afternoon, Amara stood in the lecture hall at the community college, her heart racing as the professor handed back their midterm exams. When she saw her grade, a 92, something inside her chest expanded. She'd done it. She was really doing it. After class, she drove to the Pritchard's farm. She still worked there part-time, not because she had to anymore, but because she wanted to. Because Mrs. Pritchard had saved her life, and some debts could never be fully repaid, only honored. There's our nurse. Mrs. Pritchard called from the porch, her weathered face breaking into a wide smile. How'd the exam go? 92, Amara announced proudly. That's my girl. The older woman pulled her into a fierce hug. Your mama would be so proud, rest her soul. Amara's eyes misted. Her mother had died when she was 19, before she'd met Julian, before everything had fallen apart. She'd never gotten to see Amara become a nurse. But somehow, standing here in Mrs. Pritchard's embrace, she felt her mother's presence. Thank you, Amara whispered. For everything. For giving me a home when I had nothing. Oh, honey. Mrs. Pritchard pulled back, cupping Amara's face. You gave yourself a home. I just provided the space. The strength? The resilience? That was all you. That evening, Amara and Julian returned to the spot where it had all changed. The farm. The fence where he'd stood in his expensive suit, looking impossibly out of place. The envelope was long gone, cashed and transformed into tuition payments and this new life they were building. But they stood there anyway, hand in hand, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. Do you ever regret it? Amara asked quietly. Giving up the company? The money? Julian turned to look at her, his eyes soft. I gave up the things that didn't matter to get the one thing that did. How could I regret that? Some people would call you crazy. Walking away from millions. Some people never figure out what wealth actually means. He squeezed her hand. I'm the richest man alive, Amara. I have you. She laughed, that free, genuine sound he loved. That's incredibly cheesy. Doesn't make it less true. They stood there as the sun dipped below the horizon, and Amara thought about the journey that had brought them here. The pain, the loss, the years of survival, the impossible reunion, the choice to forgive, to risk, to try again. Hey, Julian said suddenly. Remember what you asked me that day? When I first came back. Which part? You asked me why I left. Why I stopped loving you. Amara nodded, the memory still tender. I want to answer it again, Julian said, turning to face her fully. The truth is, I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day. I just forgot that love isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, even when you're broken. It's about choosing each other, every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard, Amara added. Especially then. He pulled her close. And I choose you, Amara. Today, tomorrow, and every day after that. For the rest of my life. She rose on her tiptoes and kissed him, soft and sure. I choose you too. Above them, the first stars began to appear. Rosie grunted from her pen nearby, content and well-fed. The wind carried the scent of hay and wildflowers. Everything was ordinary. Everything was perfect. You know what I realized? Amara said, pulling back to look at him. What? We spent so much time thinking love was about sacrifice. About giving up pieces of yourself. But real love, she gestured between them. Real love is about becoming more. About building something together that makes you both stronger. Julian's eyes shimmered. When did you get so wise? Somewhere between feeding pigs and falling in love with you again. She grinned. Probably the pigs taught me. He laughed, that full-bodied sound that still made her heart skip. And as they walked back to their car, hand in hand, Amara thought about the woman she'd been 6 years ago. The one who'd loved so desperately she'd lost herself. The one who'd survived poverty and heartbreak and loneliness, so profound it had nearly broken her. That woman was still part of her. But she wasn't that woman anymore. She was stronger now. Wiser. More whole. And she was loved, truly, deeply loved, by a man who'd learned that success meant nothing without someone to share it with. Their story hadn't been easy. It hadn't been perfect. But it was theirs. And it was beautiful.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.